In this video, we're going to go into more detail about why derivatives are vectors. This video is mostly going to be an upgraded version of my video on vectors from my Tensors for Beginners series, so I would highly recommend that you watch that one first if you haven't already. So in that original video on vectors, I talked about how we can take a vector v and expand it out as a linear combination of basis vectors. So I have two sets of basis vectors here, the old basis and the new basis, and I can build a vector v using the old basis like this, so that's one copy of e1 and 1.5 e2 vectors, and I can do the same thing with the new basis like this, so that's 1 e1 tilde and 2 e2 tilde vectors. So doing this with individual vectors seems really easy, but what we're going to do in this video is the same process of figuring out vector components in a basis, but instead of doing it for individual vectors, we're going to figure out vector components for vector fields. So here we have a vector field where there's a vector at every point in space, but in this video we're going to deal with a slightly different type of vector field, and that's a vector field along a curve. So that means we define a vector at every point along a curve. So we have a bunch of curves here, and the way we get vector fields from curves is to look at the sets of tangent vectors to those curves. So looking at tangent vectors gives us a vector field that's defined everywhere on the curve. So we can think of a curve as a function that takes some input parameter lambda and outputs a vector capital R. So we can think of the lambda parameter as being a bit like time, and as time moves forward and increases, the position vector capital R will change, tracing out a curve in space as it goes along. So if we want to get a vector tangent to this curve, we just need to calculate the derivative, or the rate of change of r with respect to the parameter lambda, which is dr by d lambda. And that will involve taking a position vector r of lambda and another position vector a small step away, r of lambda plus h, and finding the difference vector between them and dividing by h. And then to compute the derivative, we take the limit of this expression as h approaches 0. So taking a curve and applying this derivative process gives us a tangent vector defined at every point along the curve. So we basically have a vector field along the curve. So you can see here that we have a Cartesian xy coordinate system. And remember that in the Cartesian coordinate system, the basis vectors look like this. They're the same everywhere in space. Now what we want to do is to use these basis vectors to measure the tangent vectors along the curve. And since there are an infinite number of tangent vectors along the curve, you might think that measuring the components would be pretty difficult. But it's actually really easy. We just take this vector field, dr by d lambda, and expand it out in the Cartesian coordinates using the multivariable chain rule. Now remember, these partial derivatives here, these are just the basis vectors ex and ey, as we discussed in a previous video. So if we rearrange this formula here, I've basically taken this vector field and written it as a linear combination of these basis vectors here. And that would mean these derivatives here, dx by d lambda and dy by d lambda, these would be the components of the vector field, because they tell us how much of the basis vectors ex and ey make up the vectors. And if we use this notation here I talked about, where c1 is equal to x and c2 is equal to y, I can rewrite this chain rule as a summation using the Einstein notation. And that lets us express the basis vectors and components a little more compactly. So in the beginning of this video, I talked about how taking a single vector v and expanding it into a linear combination of basis vectors e1 and e2 would give us the components v1 and v2. Now, when we have a vector field given along a curve, given by dr by d lambda, we can also expand it into a linear combination of basis vectors partial r by partial x and partial r by partial y, using chain rule, and that means the components of the vectors would be the derivatives dx by d lambda and dy by d lambda. So these two situations might look pretty different, but they're actually really similar. We have a vector that we're going to expand, some basis vectors, and finally the vector components. So these situations are really pretty similar. And if we want to use the Einstein notation, we can also write things like this, where c1 is equal to x and c2 is equal to y. So all of that might seem pretty abstract, so let's go through an example so we can understand things better. So we'll take a look at this example of a circular curve where the x-coordinate of the curve is given by the function 2 cosine lambda, and the y-coordinate of the curve is given by the function 2 sine of lambda. So this curve is just a circle of radius 2 centered at the origin. And the vector field given by this curve is made up of these tangent vectors here. So we can expand out this vector field dr by d lambda using chain rule. And what we want are these components here. So the derivative dx by d lambda is just the derivative of 2 cosine of lambda, which is negative 2 sine of lambda. And the derivative dy by d lambda is just the derivative of 2 sine of lambda, which is 2 cosine of lambda. So the vector field here can be written as this linear combination, where these are the basis vectors and these are the components. And if we want, we could also write the components of this vector field in the Cartesian basis as a column vector like this. Okay, so let's just see if these components make sense. When lambda is equal to 0, on the curve we're at the point x equals 2, y equals 0, and the vector at this point should have components 0, 2. And looking at this picture, that looks like about what we would expect. And here, where lambda is equal to pi over 4, we're at this point here, and the vector should have components minus the square root of 2 plus the square root of 2. And looking at this picture, that looks about right. And finally, when lambda is equal to pi over 2, we're at this point here, and the vector should have components negative 2, 0. And again, that looks about right. So this column vector really does contain the components of the vectors in this vector field with respect to the Cartesian basis vectors. Now, of course, there's nothing special about the Cartesian coordinate system. We can also look at a curve using the polar coordinate system. So we can again expand this vector field dr by d lambda using the chain rule, but this time we expand it using the polar coordinates little r and theta. And so we can rewrite it like this, and again, these would be the basis vectors er and e theta, meaning that these derivatives would be the components. And if we rewrite things with p1 is equal to r and p2 is equal to theta, we can rewrite this linear combination using the Einstein notation. So again, just as we can expand a vector v as a linear combination of basis vectors and components, we can also expand the vector field dr by d lambda as a linear combination using the chain rule, where these partial derivatives are the basis vectors and these derivatives with respect to lambda are the components. And again, we can write this even more compactly using the Einstein notation, where p1 and p2 are the polar coordinate variables. So to make this more concrete, let's go back to our circle example. We already have the circle curve parameterized in Cartesian coordinates, but we'll need to convert it over to polar coordinates in order to take derivatives. So as you hopefully remember, the little r radius variable is equal to the square root of x squared plus y squared, and if we substitute these functions in for x and y, we get this. So the 2 squareds become 4s, and we can factor the 4s out, and the cosine squared plus sine squared is just equal to 1. So this is just the square root of 4, which is equal to 2. So r of lambda is always equal to 2, which makes sense since this circle has a constant radius of 2 everywhere. Next, theta is equal to arctan of y over x, and substituting these in, we get this. So the 2's cancel, and as you might remember, sine over cosine is equal to tangent, and arctan of tangent, well, those are just inverse functions of each other, so the arctan and the tangent undo each other and cancel out, so we're just left with lambda. So theta of lambda is equal to lambda. So the parameterization of the circle curve in polar coordinates is just r equals 2 and theta equals lambda, which makes sense since it's just a curve of constant radius traveling around in a counterclockwise direction. So given this parameterization in polar coordinates, we can try to get the components of this vector field in polar coordinates. So the component d little r by d lambda, that's just the derivative of 2, which is 0 since 2 is a constant. And the component d theta by d lambda is just the derivative of lambda, which is 1. So the components of this vector field in polar coordinates are really simple. It's just 0 and 1. And again, we can write that in a column vector like this. So do these components make sense? Well, the components are always 0 and 1 everywhere. So the basis vector for little r always points outward from the origin, and the basis vector for theta is always at a right angle to that r vector, and the length of the theta vector is equal to its distance from the origin. So since this circle has a radius of 2, the basis vector also has a length of 2. So these components, 0 and 1, look about right. All the vectors have no components in the r direction, and they're the same length as the theta basis vector. And that applies to tangent vectors everywhere on the curve, so the components 0, 1 make sense. So we found for this circle curve here, we can parameterize it in Cartesian coordinates or in polar coordinates, it doesn't matter which. And for the vector field of tangent vectors, which is given by dr by d lambda, we can use the chain rule to either expand it out in terms of the Cartesian basis or the polar basis. And in each basis, we get different components for the vector field. So really, the main takeaway of this video is you already know that when we have an ordinary vector, we can expand it in one basis or expand it in another basis, and in each case, we get different sets of components depending on which basis we use. And the exact same thing is true for vector fields along a curve. We can use multivariable chain rule to expand it out in one basis or another basis, and we'll get different components for that vector field depending on which basis we use. And using the Einstein summation notation, we can also write things like this. So I really hope you see the connection between these two sets of formulas. We're really just doing the same thing. We have a vector, we have basis vectors, and we have components. It's basically the exact same thing. The only difference is that for the case of vector fields, we need to think about the basis vectors and the components at every point in space. And we need to use chain rule to get things right. But other than that, the case of individual vectors and the case of vector fields are really very similar. And in the next video, we're going to show that just like ordinary vectors whose components are contravariant, the components of vector fields are also contravariant because they behave in the opposite way that basis vectors do.